Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining with me this morning, and welcome everyone from afar at every hour of the night and day. It's a blessing that we can be together, and it makes me think how rare it is that a revelation such as this can be given to a whole world publicly, whereas in most places in the universe it would only happen in a very clandestine manner, in secret through back doors, in underground gatherings and things like this. So we have this window of opportunity, this window of freedom that we should not take for granted. We don't know what the future will hold in that regard. So here we are. This morning I'm going to provide part of the teaching about relationships and higher purpose. I say part because the foundation for this teaching is already presented in the new message. And I'll make reference to where it is and where you can read that. This teaching is specifically designed for all of you who are students of the Revelation, who are on a journey consciously. And so I've tailored my teaching this morning to you and to all those who will hear this in the future, who are part of the worldwide community of the new message. First of all, I'd like to say that relationships is a big focus of the new message. It places a very high value on the quality and the meaning of our relationships and what we're learning there. It places such a high quality that it says the majority of our authentic learning is happening within the realm of relationships. That within ourselves, with ourselves, we can only do so much. For we cannot see ourselves totally or clearly. We're blind to many aspects of ourselves that others might be able to see. And beyond that, what people are doing in relationships, for better or worse, is a complete demonstration to us, if we can see this clearly without judgment and condemnation, what it is teaching us about the value of knowledge, the wisdom it is giving us, both through the demonstration of error and through the demonstration of inspiration. So we have the whole world to teach us about the value and meaning of relationships if we have the eyes to see and the willingness to look. So relationships and higher purpose begins with our relationship with knowledge. For it is the primary and fundamental relationship of higher purpose in our lives. We must build this relationship to understand what relationships and higher purpose will mean with those whom we might meet or engage with. And so we begin with the most primary relationship we have. That is our relationship with knowledge. And knowledge represents our connection to our source and to those who have sent us into the world, to be in the world at this time under these circumstances. Relationships with people of a higher caliber will come later. For our fundamental work regards knowledge and regards bringing our life into focus and balance, developing self-knowledge so we can understand who we are, and how we got to where we are. Things that most people are not really aware of or can account for objectively or accurately. Yeah. Good. We have a quote from the teaching here. This is from the teaching on resonance. I would like to read that to you. Your most fundamental relationship at this point is with knowledge within yourself. That is the relationship you must focus upon and build. If you can do this and sustain this focus in your life, then others will come into your life to play significant roles. But without knowledge, you're only guessing. You're only dreaming. You're trying to be and to do and to have all these things without any real certainty of the direction that your life must take, and where you are really going, and what you're here to do, and what you're here to serve. Be with that just for a moment. It says a lot. So building your relationship with knowledge is what will bring you into your greater purpose in life, and what will guide you through the complexities and the uncertainties of navigating a world undergoing great change. The greatest asset that you have, the greatest strength that you have, the greatest wisdom that you have. This journey will rearrange your thinking and will clarify your relationships and rearrange the course of your life according to knowledge within you, as it was meant to be. This brings you back to the natural relationship with yourself that is functional, meaningful, and has true purpose and direction. Things that without knowledge you could only hope for or guess at. People call whatever is moving them or prompting them, they can call that knowledge, but is it really knowledge? Their desires, their attractions, their compulsions, is that really knowledge? How do you tell the difference? Except by sinking deeper into the well within you, that you can feel what it's like at that depth. And within the stillness of that depth, there's real strength and clarity. This is why we practice. Building a connection between our surface worldly mind that is so swayed and moved by everything around us to the deeper mind within us that represents our eternal state and our greater purpose for being here. To build that connection. And from that, we learn how to build real connections with others. So as we proceed, knowledge will seek to balance and clarify our relationships with others. And we'll probably reach certain thresholds about who to be with and not to be with. Some of you have been through these thresholds. Some of you have yet to go through these thresholds. They aren't necessarily what you would expect, or with the people you might expect them to be with. They're like gates. Remember, I took a walking trip with Patricia and Reed through the countryside of Britain, which has these beautiful walking trails that transverse people's property. And they go all over the nation. And some of them will go for like 100 miles. And you cross one person's field and you come to another gate. You have to climb over the gate because they have to keep the animals from going through that gate. So it reminds me of an image of walking through a field and hitting another gate, and then going further and hitting another gate. But in this larger context, the gates are kind of where you pause, and you're not sure if you really want to go through that gate. Personally, you're not sure, or maybe you don't really want to go through that gate. But something within you is saying, go, 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 go. And if you can feel that and know that, you will take your doubting mind over that gate, and you'll head out into a new field with the greater strength that you had before passing through that gate. So the problem we face in relationships is that people want to find relationship before they really know what they're doing, who they are, why they're here, what their destiny might be. They just want a relationship. They want to fill that void of emptiness and loneliness And they're encouraged by advertising or pressures from family to get married early. They're pushed by their own insecurity about they don't know who they are and they don't know how to be, and they're having a relationship and I'm not having a relationship, so what's wrong with me? Can you all relate to this? Good, okay. So what happens is people establish relationships prematurely. These relationships are partial or even often very destructive. So you end up with failed relationships, failed marriages, failed families, and a lot of personal pain and agony along the way. And some of this personal pain and agony can have a real damaging effect on someone's life and future. So this is a serious problem. This is a serious dilemma. And if you look at the condition of people's relationships in the world, which you can see all around you, it is clear we need a real upgrade. We need a big upgrade. I feel that romance, for example, is one of the most destructive human activities in the world. More energy is spent and lost, more time is spent and lost, more suffering is engendered with little to show for it than most other human endeavors, except for war. And the new message goes so far as to really create warning about if you start to feel a romantic surge within yourself regarding someone, to really step back. You're heading into dangerous territory. You don't know what you're doing, but something's compelling you. And you want to stay grounded as you can if that does happen. So this is the big problem with relationships. People want relationships before they want to know what they're doing in life, really doing in life. And people bring that into the new message when they come to study here and they learn about relationships and higher purpose, which to them looks like a super romance. It's like the biggest, most glorified, most awesome romance you could have, to have romance and higher purpose. And of course, that just ignites the flame, turns up the burner on your stove, right? On your passionate stove. And so they come with the same blind approach. And perhaps they will ask, well, where's my relationship of higher purpose? Who is my relationship of higher purpose? Maybe it's her. Maybe it's him. And often when we have big gatherings, I can see how people are sort of checking each other out. Like the attraction meter or the whatever the gauge is they're using. And we just do that unknowingly, unless you can hold yourself back or say, whoops, I'm not going to do that with these people. And it's a powerful biological force. Because frankly, throughout most of our history, you had to have a family, before you were 15 years old. Because you're only going to live to be 35 or 40 or less. And so time was of the essence to reproduce. And so that's all wired into our biological code. So instead of having a relationship determine where you need to go and what you need to do, you need to find out where you need to go and what you need to do, and that will determine the kind of relationship that would be appropriate for you. Otherwise, the cart is before the horse. So people are circumscribed in marriage and family before they even have a clue of what they're about, and they live a life of frustration or escape or self-repudiation as a result, and their marriages are incomplete and frustrating and often just break down over time. There are exceptions, but this is generally what happens with people. Whatever is unfulfilled that is essential to them never even had a chance to find itself, for you to find it. So I tell people, purpose and direction come first. Relationships, if they're meaningful, come later. instead of the other way around. Act in haste, repent at leisure. So, no one ever got married too late. So I know many of you have walked the path that I'm describing here. So the first thing to see is that recognition is not relationship. I'd like to expand upon this. Feeling either drawn to someone's appearance or intrigued by their personality, or feeling a deep connection or a sense of recognition, or I know this person, or we have we go way back together, or whatever goes through your mind is not a relationship. This is where people make the first mistake, because they have a recognition experience and then they assume it's a relationship and they try to build a relationship around that experience without knowing who the person is, where they're going in life, because they don't know where they're going in life. So hopefully the marriage will show us both where we need to go in life. It'll force us to go somewhere in life. But it's not really a natural connection. Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says, the sage goes on not on what he sees, but on what he feels. So the appearance of things really cannot be relied upon. Recognition is not relationship. Most of the people you have a strong recognition relationship with, you will never have a real relationship with that person, nor should you. So restraint becomes, in this case, the most important thing. And the tragedy is people are giving their life away before they even have a life. And they're making their relationship or their family their reason for being, but it's not really their reason for being, in many cases. Some cases, perhaps. But for someone who has a greater destiny, this is a deadly trap. So in this case, the person who excites you the most could be the most dangerous person in your life in terms of who could take you out of the path that you really must follow. Only to find out years later that you're both not going in the same direction. Or this person cannot take on a spiritual journey such as you're undertaking now with you. They stop dead in their tracks, you feel you have to keep going, and then you have a real big dilemma. What do I do now? Maybe they oppose your journey, or maybe they merely tolerate it. But in either case, there's a divergence happening. And it's a natural one. It's not like you're failing the relationship. You're just going where you need to be going, and the other person can't go with you. There's no blame. It's just the truth. So for some people, the first big threshold, the first big gate is their prior relationship commitments. Now, children is different. You have a commitment naturally to see your children into adulthood. And in some cases, you will have a natural commitment to take care of your elderly, failing parents. Your message makes those clear as exceptions. But to all others, your first relationship is with knowledge. And many people will not even come close to this teaching on knowledge, almost knowing that it could blow up their life. They'll be drawn and they'll see it and go, can't go there. It's too much. It's like dynamite. So they'll protect their previous investments and they'll protect their previous commitments. But in their heart, something is lost. So when you see the sunken faces and the hollow looks and the downcast expressions, I mean, this is part of the spirit being dead in someone. They either never got on the search or they gave up at some point for something else. And now they're about their life. I see it in every country. Sometimes it's poverty, sometimes it's political oppression adds to this downcast. But it's rare to see someone really have spirit and vitality and a sense of purpose and meaning. It's innate. It's not like it's just got adopted. So that is why we need a major upgrade in relationships. So fundamentally, relationships are what you can do together. Not the glory of recognition, not the intoxication of romance. That's what you can do together. That's what's going to make or break your relationship. I don't care what the initial attraction was. Here the idea of soulmate has no bearing at all. So let's take that out of the picture. It's a nice idea, but it's romance, because even if you had prior life experience with someone, it doesn't mean you have anything you can do together in this life. Or that if you did, it doesn't mean that either of you or the other person is ready for that. You could even meet a member of your spiritual family, which would be a rare occurrence. And if they're not able to participate with you, there's nothing you can do but move on. It's going to be a very confusing experience. Likewise, you can't marry potential in people. This is a problem that many women make, rehabilitating a man who they think is charming or talented, but is addicted to something or is disabled, and they're going to, they're going to rehabilitate this man, right? It's a common mistake. Or vice versa. I mean, the person is beautiful but lost, and you're going to help them get back into life. As like a rescue mission. It's based on what you can do together. If you can't do anything together, you really have no business being together. And when you begin this kind of journey that the new message has set out for us, now you're about doing things beyond just the normal activities of, work and home and normal activities. Now you're taking on something bigger that rules out a whole lot of people because they're not ready to do that, or they may never be ready to do that. And you can't make them ready. Either ready or not. When you have the eyes to see, you'll still feel impacted by people, you'll still feel attraction, but when you can step back and have the eyes to see, you will be able to see these things I speak of. And the truth is glaringly present, if you can feel it, but you cannot be intoxicated with anybody. This will save you. My God, will this save you so much time. People are spending their lives away, their youth, their formative years on failed relationships that could have been seen at the outset to be a failed relationship. The new message says you can recognize the potential or the the value of a relationship at the beginning. But the truth is, you can't determine ultimate success at the beginning, because even the most promising relationship has to be tested and proven over time. Therefore, do not make declarations about people. Oh, Marshall, I just met the person I think is my relation with higher purpose. No, that's a meaningless statement. Even if they were, you have the next 20 years or more to find out if that is true. So, don't claim the person you're with is an RHP, because you don't know yet. Don't tell your friends you met someone who you think is your RHP person, because it's completely premature and you have no idea if it's true or not. What makes it true is what you can do together and the journey you will take together, which has big thresholds for each of you. There's no guarantee that someone's going to pass through that next gate. Some people just stop. That's as far as they can go. But you have further to go. Because your calling is calling you out of the ordinary, calling you out of the jungle of confusion, calling you out of confused relationships, calling you out of all the things that people use to circumscribe themselves and to try to determine their lives. And it'll seem like you're being deprived, because the higher up the mountain you go, the fewer the people are there. And you realize you can't really have a relationship with a person who's unknown to themselves. They have years of work to do that have nothing to do with you. And you can't bring people up in a relationship. This does not work. It's like Patricia has this beautiful analogy. She ran the Boston Marathon. She has this beautiful analogy of people who stop running to help someone else and never finish the race. You got to finish the race. That's what's calling you. That's why you have a calling. So clearly, recognition and attraction does not denote a relationship of higher purpose, or really any relationship very thoroughly or very deeply, because you haven't done anything together. And marriages begin to fail when people actually start doing things together and find out they really don't get along, they're not really compatible, they have hidden addictions that they would never try to reveal in a romantic encounter, and they begin to find out their limitations and your limitations, and the magic quickly goes away, and you're dealing with kind of a relationship that doesn't work very well. And I can assure you, if you have to work on a relationship a lot, it doesn't work. It's like the car that has to go in the shop every 2 weeks. Doesn't work. So stop investing in things that don't work. This is real fundamental, but it's so important. It is so important. So the next thing I want to speak on is that the new message says that we have a relationship with everything. Every possession we own, our house, our car, our phone, our clothes, our pets, any object of value that we have a relationship with that. But it says the relationships that matter are with living things. Because any other relationship is a fabrication of the mind. Oh, I have a relationship with my cell phone. Well, what's that? That's just an idea, right? Okay, maybe you do. Maybe your cell phone is your primary relationship, as it is for many young people today. You know, they send 2-sentence messages to each other, but they have no idea how to be with anybody. Your primary relationship is with life, not objects, not possessions. This is what matters. So, and secondarily, if you have a primary relationship with animals or plants, you still have to deal with people. So your problem with people never goes away, and your opportunity with people never goes away. And the person who goes off and meditates to try to connect with God, they get sent back. Oh no, you have to go back, you have to build a relationship with yourself, you have to build a relationship with people, you have to build a relationship with the world, you can't just transcend. We spent all this time getting you into this place, and you want to jettison yourself out? There's no escape. Escape is kind of a failure, actually. So when you return to your spiritual family beyond this world, they said, okay, did you get done what you need to get done? Oh, that. Oh, I guess not. Okay, take a number, and we'll see where you need to go next. I don't know if you take a number. I just added that part. So what I mean here is relationships with ideologies, political theories, political parties, religious philosophy. Being an ardent defender of your faith is kind of stupid. I mean, relationship with ideas. This is where people, probably more men than women, get really lost. And if you don't do well with people, you tend to bond to ideas and become very fixated there, and even very defensive there. Or I defend my beliefs against anyone. I'll go to war. I'll become a terrorist. These are not the relationships that matter. In fact, they're often substitutes. So in terms of, you still have a relationship with your work and what you do, and even with what you believe or things that are value to you, but it's your relationship with people where the real learning happens. In fact, the new message says that your relationship with people is the main learning arena for everyone. And if you try to circumvent that to have primary relationships with other things or places or objects or, religious edifices or shrines or sacred objects, and the new message says anything that is permanent is not worthy of devotion. Not devotion at this level. And devotion is a key element of RHP. Not just alignment, not just appreciation, not just shared values, not just, we both believe in the same thing. Devotion is one of the mysterious elements that is critical. I'll talk about that later. So we have a slide, pyramid. So Rita has created this beautiful image for us. It's a very simple image, but it is important in terms of the levels that it designates. So RHP represents the apex of this pyramid. Below are relationships of importance, but of different levels of importance. And at the bottom are encounters, which are not relationships, but can still be meaningful and memorable and significant, or terrible and troubling and stressful. Hmm. So relationships of higher purpose is not based upon personal needs or aspirations. It's not an escape from loneliness. It's not like someone have a warm body with you next to you at night. It's not looking into each other's eyes and feeling warm and fuzzy. Yeah, I like that too. But this is not what RHP is about. And it is going to require a level of service because it is fostered in a mission-based environment, which is not your brain. A mission-based environment is a relational environment. You may feel that you're on a mission, but you're not yet in a mission-based environment, which is an environment of people. So some people, launch themselves on their idea of mission, but it's all in their head, and they're not in a mission-based environment, and which is really where it's kind of the fertile soil for relationships of higher purpose to eventually emerge. Which means you can't create it and make it happen. And people who do that often become adversarial in life, become combatants, become, me against the world, me against them, my belief system versus your belief system, my religion versus your religion, my race versus your race. I mean, it's just becomes so unhealthy. Within this mission-based environment, RHP can take many forms. It can take the form of mentorship, joining with another in service with that mission-based environment. It can take the form of husband and wife, though I think that's more rare. And if that happens, then you're also subject to all the things that kind of relationship requires, which is a much bigger level of criteria, greater level of criteria, which involves pillars. Your pillars are in order and constant with each other. You're highly compatible in the areas that really matter, which is not what most people think about. You have to be going in the same direction. You have to know yourself well enough to know how you are and where you're going, and that you would go in that direction with or without that person. I mean, you have to have reached a tremendously strong relationship with yourself to be able to engage in an RHP relationship at a higher level. So people try to make their marriage into an RHP by adding, spiritual meaning and ideas, and we're going to meditate together. Come on, meditate with me. Come on. You're going to read the books. Here, read this book with me. But the real key elements are not there. The real ingredients for RHP, they're just not there. You can't make them be there. You can't make a relationship of higher purpose with somebody. It's ordained at a higher level. I mean, it's not, you just can't make it happen with the person you want it to happen with. And when you realize that, then it's time to step back. In my case, I mean, I went through a very long period of trial and testing. Even my marriage was being tested. Is Patricia going to be able to stay with me? Well, in this period, I was going off on these really far out journeys into places, and to learn about the presence of the intervention, basically, or to do other things of more mysterious nature with my infant child and my young wife. And is she going to put up with this? Can she go where I need to go? And of course, we settled down after that, but I mean, it's very much a testing thing. I mean, Angelic Assembly doesn't know if this relationship's going to work. Given what people can equivocate, they can stop, they can be pulled off course by something else. Anything can happen. On earth, anything can happen. So the proving and the testing period is very great and important. So it's what happens between you and another over time. And knowledge will indicate the kind of relationship you should have. So you don't make it into something that is not meant to be, or get impatient. I want it now. Okay. So basically, it's my job, or hopefully I can take the romance and idealism out of RHP. Otherwise, we want it to be what we want it to be, and that just brings in all the unmet needs and the desire for partnership and the fantasies about somebody, and everything gets put into that stream, and the stream gets really polluted, and the clear waters are no longer there, and now you're in the muddy stream of your personal life. And this has got to happen at another level beyond that. So obviously there are other important relationships. I mean, lasting friendships, mentorships, studenthood you share in learning the revelation can be very important. Work relationships, parent-sibling relationships can be very important. So these are all very formative kinds of things, because you don't just have RHP, out of high school. I mean, just my own personal feeling is that young people, young boys and girls should have very little encounter with each other until later. But that's not how the world is. So, I mean, they try to enforce that in the Islamic world, sometimes brutally, but I mean, there is a reason for that. Yeah. And then there are just encounters which can be meaningful, terrible, mostly uneventful. Never try to make all your encounters meaningful. That's like trying to make all your dreams meaningful. That's putting a lot of meaning where meaning doesn't exist. Maybe you'll have a significant dream 2 or 3 times in your whole life. Kind of thing that would alter the course of your life or have such an impact on you. Everything else is water under the bridge. You'll find much more personal meaning going out in the world and trying to find your true direction there. Otherwise, you're sitting home going like this. Going nowhere. Y'all with me? Okay, I'm taking you somewhere. So, the truth is that most people involved with the new message of God are not far enough along in their development to be in the realm of RHP. You're just not there yet. And even if when you get there, you're going to have to go through a long trial period to see if that relationship can really hold up and if it really is what you thought it was. So your job is to take the path you need to take, connect with the people who are going to be a part of that, or you need to be, and just keep going. And there's no assurance of success. I mean, we are programmed, even from childhood, but certainly by adolescence, to be seeking the romantic one. Right? Boy, that's a hard wire in us. That's a hard wire. Okay. We have a slide. So what is essential for the development of those who are preparing for RHP and for those who are already involved in RHP? The following are part of everyone's development here. So this relates to all of us. We're going to go through each one of these. They're very important, actually. And the first one is to build the self-awareness and objectivity to know your strengths, weaknesses, and tendencies. To see and be able to see clearly what is holding you back. This is not an easy thing. This is not like, oh, I can do that. No, you can't. Even for someone who is advanced in the way of knowledge is still learning this. But if you are blind in this area, then you just have no idea of who you are, except being a personality with certain kinds of personality traits, and you like this and you don't like that, and that's all you know about yourself. So just be with us for a minute. You could do a very simple process with this of taking a one-day retreat and go off and really writing out your strengths as you know them now, your weaknesses, and your tendencies. And then look to see how you would be able to know what's holding you back. Some things are subtle, but some things are like a road sign on the side of the highway saying, do not enter. But we just keep pressing on and pressing on and pressing on. Okay, let's go to the next one. Secondly, it's necessary to have sufficient control of your desires, impulses, and reactions to others, and to be able to moderate and adjust your responses, especially in stressful situations. Wow. This is lifelong learning here, okay? So I'm not just saying you just see this, know this, get this, do this, because you're not. But you work on this. This is the thing that you bring into your life and awareness, and you practice with different people and places and situations. You know, one of my personal guidelines is to always know where my mind is going. You got to be really present to do that and watchful instead of just driving headlong into whatever it is that draws you in or pushes you out. Spend a moment with this. So one of the things that number 2 means is that you can't just claim, well, this is who I am and this is how I am. Deal with it, people. Negative. You have to adapt. And there's a point where you don't give up who you are or what you know and what you feel, but you have to know where that threshold is between where I yield and where I don't yield. But you can't show your personality, this is how I am. Bullshit. You don't even know who you are. So how can you say this is how it may be how you have behaved in the past, but that doesn't mean that that should be honored as a boundary to who you are. We can edit out that word. Yeah, rated G. PG. So just think about this for a minute. And we'll be posting this on the community site, so it's not going to go away. So go on to number 3. To be able to account to others regarding your intentions and what motivates you, and to be able to see the effects of these have on others as well. Most people are unable to do this. You have to be really in touch with your experience to do this. You have to really have a sense of what's going on with yourself. Not like you know for sure completely, but that you are grounded in your experience enough to at least to know what your experience is. It may not be conclusive, it may not be the ultimate truth, but you can say, well, right now, this is how I feel. And what motivates you? Oh, it's so powerful. What's really motivating you? This is big time self-evaluation right here. And you may notice as we go through these, this is all about self-knowledge. It's not about being guided. It's not about getting the message of your next step. It's not about waiting, for anything. This is the work you do with you. It's the work you bring into your experience increasingly until you get to a point where you're practicing a lot and you're remembering to practice and you practice. Otherwise, you don't know where you're at. You really don't. So what people do to avoid that personal crisis of not knowing where that is, they stay stimulated all the time. Music, movies, doing stuff, just stimulated to escape this crisis that they don't know who they are or what they're doing, which is actually just putting them rudderless out into the world. Taking the cues from other people, they're doing what they're told they should do, they're motivated by things that have nothing to do with who they are. They give their life away to people, places, and things, and then feel empty, frustrated, angry, and seek escape and other things. This is the human condition we're talking about. Number 4, to understand your own history and journey enough to know how knowledge has spoken to you in your life and how you have responded to failure, challenge, and disappointment in the past. I've mentioned many times saying, to know where you are, you have to know where you've been. I mean, you're on a journey. Do you know what that journey has been? Like the critical turning points, significant relationships, downfalls, big errors. In fact, your errors are more instructive than your successes because your errors hold the key to your wisdom training. There's no wisdom training to say, wow, I really did great then. No. So when you fail, that your wisdom training, that's the bedrock of your wisdom training. So to avoid failure or try to hide failure is not going to serve you. I mean, to consider a relationship with somebody, you would really want to know how they respond to failure, challenge, and disappointment, wouldn't you? Because that's what you're going to be dealing with every day. Because otherwise people meet and it's all about looking good and trying to impress and trying to be what the other person wants, and there's no reality at all, and so nobody's really being straight with each other. Better to have written out on a sheet, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is my strengths, my weaknesses, my tendencies, this is how I've dealt with failure, challenge, and disappointment. Here, read it. See if we connect. I learned that from Patricia, by the way. She had such a document. But she never. No, but you see what I'm saying? It's like, let's get all the preamble out of this and just say, kind of this is where I'm at, and do we connect? I mean, are we resonating or not resonating? Are we? And that honesty is beautiful, and it's it saves a lot of time. So take a moment and think about this. It's in 2 parts. First, about understanding your own journey, enough to know how knowledge speaks to you. If you know how knowledge speaks to you, then that's probably how knowledge is going to speak to you. Whether in images, feelings, words, signs, upset stomach. I mean, what is it? How does knowledge get your attention? given your nature and your makeup? Are you auditory? Are you visual? Are you sensory? Are you kinetic? How does that work for you? So that's the first part of the statement. The second is about how you function facing failure, challenge, and disappointment. Okay, we're going to go on to number 5. There are 7 of these, by the way. This is number 5, to develop your ability to discern others and to communicate effectively with people with different natures in different situations. This is where young people living on their chat on their phone are going to have a real hard time in life. They have no people skills. They don't have discernment. They don't know how to communicate. And they don't know how to be real. I mean, it's just going to be terrible for them. I feel for them. They're going to be pretty dysfunctional. Communicate effectively with people with different natures. Somebody who just is so different than you, or just irritates you. You got to find a way to communicate with that person. You can't just dismiss them or put a label on them and reject them. Excuse me. And stressful situations, we are entering stressful situations, let me tell you, on a scale never seen before in this world. So people aren't going to be behaving very well under these stressful situations, right? So all the niceties of culture are going to kind of be stripped away to the harshness of reality that people are dealing with. And civil discourse is already disappearing, if you haven't noticed, in many places. Okay, we'll go on number 6. To be able to respond to change in a timely manner and to your own needs adequately to maintain your mental and physical well-being and to meet the changing requirements of your life. So there are actually 3 parts to this. There's being able to respond to change. I mean, is change like, you know, I'm operating at a snail's pace, doing this change that has to happen. Meeting the need to adequately maintain your mental and physical well-being. And I will say at this point that everyone living in separation is mentally ill because of it. Okay. I'm not putting people down. It's just this is a condition of living in separation. It generates mental illness. It makes people sick. It makes them other than what they are. It distorts them. And to adapt to being in this world, you become even more distorted. That's why it's a long journey to get back to who you are, because you've gotten so out there in becoming a product of your family's expectations or your own desires, and so banged around by the world that you have embitterment and judgment and all this stuff. So, you know, manageable levels of mental illness enables you to be socially engaged with people. If they're not manageable, then you really can't function in society. But if you're limited crazy, then you can kind of get along somewhat with people, most people. But nonetheless, you know, you have mental handicaps, and you have physical problems to meet the changing requirements of your life. So it's not just I need to get better, I want to be healed. It's like I got to do this, or I'm not going to be able to function very well. So the Great Ways of Change creates a whole nother impetus for getting your health and your well-being together, because you're just going to fail out there. You're going to be a victim, not a contributor in a new world reality. So if you can see it in that light, the great ways of change can be a huge impetus. Actually, there's 8 of these. Number 7, to be able to direct your awareness, focus, and effort beyond yourself in order to meet a greater need in concert with others. Beyond yourself. So when you come into a service environment, you don't come here saying, well, this is what I have to give. No. You come saying, what do you need from me? Or what does the situation need from me? Which means you have to get beyond yourself to be a contributor. It can't be just what you want to give or what you think is important or your talents. I mean, maybe your talents aren't needed in that situation. And if you're not getting along well with people, you have to step back and say, okay, what is going on with me that I can't get along with this person? Even if you share important work together. It's not just them, they're the problem. No, it's you're the problem. They're part of the problem too, but you are part of the problem. And lastly, this is about you being an integral part of something bigger, living within the limitations and requirements this creates. Mission-based life is going to create limitations and requirements. You can't have it all, be it all here. You have to adapt to this. It doesn't adapt to you very much. So this is all about the work we need to do on ourselves and with ourselves over time, but increasingly, and not just as an afterthought once in a while. I mean, you can put these things up in your mirror and say, okay, well, I need to kind of be working on these things as I go through each day. Otherwise, the work doesn't get done, and you're still kind of where you were. We have another slide. Relationships of higher purpose. A relationship of higher purpose is not a goal in and of itself. I'm not here to have a relationship of higher purpose. Otherwise, you're going to misconstrue what you're doing. It is a result of living the inspired and determined life, a life of dedication and service that can only come into being by following knowledge. Relationships at this level are mysterious. They include and yet transcend the personal dimensions of those involved. They are highly functional and suffer few of the vast array of maladies and limitations that afflict most other realms of human engagement. So at this level, your relationship just pretty much has to work. You can't be working in your relationship all the time and function here. You'll have problems. Problems do arise, certainly. It won't be perfect. It won't be all smooth waters, but your relationship can't be turbulent at this level. You respect what you share, and how you're different, how you're unique, and you learn to work with that. Even a normal marriage, you have to do this. You have to curtail part of your behavior, some of your tendencies and your recklessness and your irritability and your emotions and this thing isn't going to go anywhere. This is a normal part of growing up, becoming functional in the world. So therefore, do not look for RHP in others. You can't tell. And even if you think you can tell, what you're looking at is unproven and you still can't tell if it's going to work. You can't make predictions about this. It's still an experiment. In this case, then learn to be alone. Learn to accept that you may not have a real RHP relationship in your life at this time. It's fine. Most people don't. And hold yourself back from scanning the audience to see who that person might be. That's not going to mean anything. And take care not to idealize a relationship as an RHP. Oh, well, we're so close and it's so great. And the further you go in this journey that you've been called to, you don't know if this person's going to stay with you or you can stay with them. So, and RHP is more about the purpose than the relationship. The relationship is still very important, but the mission, the purpose is more important. That's why you've been brought together. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. This is from step 130, relationships will come to me when I am prepared. Some of you are familiar with this step. It's a good step. The caveat is it won't be you who determines if you're prepared or not. I'm prepared now. I know I'm prepared. No. You don't know if you're prepared. RHP is part of a great coordination. It's not just people trying to make it together, or people share enough interests, or they can kind of be together. It's really happening at a different level. And it's not just based upon respect and alignment and even commitment. You can be aligned and respectful and committed to be with other, but you're not devoted to them. Because alignment and respect and commitment are kind of things of the mind, but devotion is something of the spirit. It's that mysterious element. And the devotion really has to be guided by knowledge. You could be devoted to someone who's going to just take you down a bad road, or committed to them. And you can't make devotion happen. It's either there or it's not. It either arises or it doesn't arise. It's okay. But you can't fabricate it. Slide. This is from Wisdom from the Greater Community, Volume 1 on marriage. Out of this relationship will come devotion, which is the highest expression of love in the world. This creates a deep love, not the kind of passionate, feverish love, not just a love of appreciation, but a kind of deep love, a deep union. Slide. This is why it's important to build your relationship with knowledge first, before you commit yourself to people, places, things, and activities. This is what it means to seek the kingdom of God first. To build your connection and awareness of this deeper agenda within you. This is from The Power of Knowledge, called Following the Presence. So there's certain things I want you to take away with you from this morning's gathering with me, which is to take the journey first and foremost. And this will determine who you can be with and how you can be with them in the most natural way, rather than in trying to control yourself or others, or manipulate the situation to your advantage and things like this. If relationships will come to you when you're prepared, that's an article of faith. And it's really an article of faith because you can't determine when you're prepared. And your RHP experience may not be in the context of a marriage. So if that's a long, compelling dream of yours, that just may not happen. Know yourself first before you try to know others as much as you can. I've given you some of the guidelines to follow here. It's a matter of degree. You know, just know yourself, give yourself a definition. It's not a personality profile. It's deeper than that. So some recommended readings, certainly Relationships and Higher Purpose, the book. But two teachings in particular that I would recommend. One is the Pillar of Relationships in Living the Way of Knowledge, and the other is the teaching on love and relationships. And this gives you the very foundational things of discernment and discretion, what to look for, where to hold yourself back, things of this nature. It's very powerful. It's the most beautiful wisdom training you could have, and I would love to see young people have this in particular, even if it means they can't get what they want when they want it. But will it save them time, energy, and inspiration. The new message places a very high value on the quality, meaning, and purpose of our relationships. We cannot do this alone. Nothing ever happens alone. And this is the journey we're all on. Asinavarikram.
Thank you, Marshall. Wow. That will be a lot to be with and revisit and study and pick apart over the years to come. I think, what Marshall shares comes from a great body of experience. So just know that. There's a ballast to that vessel, a deep ballast. So let's take a moment in stillness, just be with our experience right now. Be with whatever this brings up to us, whether it's inspiration or confusion or disappointment or perhaps a sense of vision or direction for you. Okay, good. So we'd like to open up the floor to you all and to those at a distance. We have a microphone we'll pass around. We have the chat where you can share what comes up for you hearing this, how you might integrate this, what you stumble upon with this, what are the dilemmas or obstructions you feel about such a teaching on knowledge, purpose, and then relationship of higher purpose. So we'd like to hear from you.
Marshall, there's a line in the teaching that approximately says the outcome of any relationship can be known at its outset. I realize the operative words are "can be known," but would you be willing to please comment on that in the context of your teaching this morning, please?
Well, I know that comment, and I've actually spoken this on a number of occasions. The word outcome is meaningful in terms of seeing if a relationship is even in the ballpark of what you think it is or want it to be. In RHP, because that's a journey, the outcome is dependent upon your participation together. So you've already crossed the first threshold, but seeing the outcome at the outset is really a first threshold kind of determination. Should I give the rest of my life to being with this person? I'm talking about partnership here. Yes or no? Is this relationship going to be able to go where I really need to go? Yes or no? This is part of the internal questioning that you can do if you find yourself being very attracted to someone and you have an opportunity to be with that person. This is part of you exercising discernment. There's no like getting involved and we'll see how it goes. That's pretty blind. You have the ability to determine, like, is this a green light or is this a red light? Regardless of the attraction, regardless of the feelings in the moment. Once you have a real engagement, and that's a go-ahead for you, then you've passed that first threshold. Then the outcome is, you can't see the outcome. So if we can qualify it in that way, so it's more like, initially, should I even get involved with this person? It's a yes or no. And there's no maybe, there's no kind of sort of, gee. Not if you value your time in your life, let's put it that way. Not if you have something better to do with yourself. That's about all I can say about that.
Anybody else? Yeah. Right there. Right there. Hold your hand up if you'd like to speak so the mic can find you.
I've had what I consider the grace to be across the great mystery of life. And I can make meaning out of anything. And I've really sensed, I'm definitely a newbie in this. But I'm in a situation with two other people that are here. And I realize from this today that I could easily slip into the rabbit hole of spiritual, not reality, righteousness. It's very different in the experience I'm having now with two other people that I love and know, and but this today is, I'm speaking up because I could always have meaning. And when I crossed over, or whatever the term is, nobody else had my experience. My youngest son, they're all adults, 3 children. My youngest son said, because I went around consciously asking, what was your experience when I was in intensive care? My youngest son, I love it now, he said, oh my gosh, Mom, you were a pain in the neck. And he's this mellow, loves everybody young man, the youngest of my 3. So that's what I want to pass forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for those of us who are in a relationship, and it's kind of it's a struggle, it's, there are things happening all the time, testing this relationship, what recommendations do you have? I mean, if it feels like, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't be with this person, should I bail right now? Should I, what do we do if we're feeling like, maybe this was a mistake?
Kind of see that once again we learn that we're all over the mountainside. Some of us are not in a relationship, but need to be. There is one on the horizon for us. Some of us are not in a relationship. There is not one on the horizon for us. Some of us are in one that really can't go on. Some of us are in one that must go on. So it's challenging, and we all have to kind of allow Marshall to plant that stake in the ground way up the mountain, and then calibrate ourselves to, well, okay, is that true? Don't just assume what Marshall says is true. Is it true? Knowledge. And if so, for you, how do you relate to that? So I would have to, in some way, put it back on you. What must you do? The perennial question and the perennial opportunity, because we're all facing something. And that is the opportunity for us to have an original insight born out of honesty and of seeing the truth, and then to act on it and to reap the rewards of that action.
This comes from Kari in Finland. This comes from Kari in Finland. He says, the new message teachings speak about the need to have right people around you in your journey, and it also speaks about verification. As I am surrounded by the wrong people, this really makes me ponder. Can you say something about this?
Well, maybe I can share my experience of this journey a little bit, because as Marshall was speaking today, some of the points he was making, I realized I actually did that as a 16-year-old or a 22-year-old, and to good effect in my life. First, and maybe this will finally come back to you, Kari, and that experience of the need, and then the fact that that's not reality. For me, being alone and learning to be with myself was absolutely essential. This kind of thirsting search for someone to be with, which in some cultures is a norm, and there's actually a shunning effect if you're not with someone. That powerful group mind effect on the mind of a young person sets them up for relationships that could be completely errant or without any purpose whatsoever, or partially with purpose, but not with sufficient purpose to generate a relationship. And growing up, I actually felt that shunning effect, mostly of friends and of middle-class Western society. But I honored what I knew. And basically what I knew is, of course I want to be in a relationship. Of course I want what they have, of course. But if it's a no around a certain person, it's a no. I'm not going to say I need, and therefore I will seek, and I'll just take the best of the lot. I'll just take the best I can see and just insert that into my life, really out of a need to complete myself, present an image of identity to friends. So I didn't do that. And actually, in the course of not doing that, I came to know myself more, what motivates me, and that strengthened and reinforced this protective barrier I felt around me, which is, if it's a no, it's a no. Simple as that. It's not I have to control my desire. It's that whoever I encounter who may want to be in a relationship with me, what is the truth? What is the truth? What is the truth? So, and in the course of that, I came to understand my own motivations, and some of them that could bring me into relationship inappropriately. And I again reinforced that intention to do no harm to myself, to another, and to where I'm going. And increasingly, I found that most of the people I was meeting who might attract me or me them, it would do harm. It would be an experiment that would end in two people going in different directions, but with great loss of time, energy, emotional well-being. And so in the course of that, coming to learn more about myself, coming to learn about my motivations and intentions and reinforce that protective barrier, I had so much energy to put elsewhere. I had almost brought my chips closer to me on the table without throwing them out there on the table, and then all of a sudden in 10 minutes you've got nothing. And you go back to the ATM machine. You keep going, right? So I had a lot of chips. And then I came in contact with purpose, which really, and I didn't actually seek it per se. I guess I did. But the real purpose I found sought me. Believe it or not, it was my father. It wasn't an obvious, well, Marshall did it, so I'll do it. This isn't a family business. I was headed out. But the communication from Marshall to me came from the truth itself and struck me at that level, and I responded. And I had the chips to invest. And so I made that investment. And the more I invested in purpose and involvement that was purposeful, the more I learned about myself. The more I became a student of knowledge, the more. And so I was increasing value on one side that I think gets hollowed out and depleted for most people by just sending their chips away, They never have more than a stack of 4 chips to put on the table of life, right? And in the course of that, being alone, learning about myself, finding purpose, developing skills and abilities, I became more ready for a relationship of a higher level, and more desiring of it. Because in the course of staying off the dance floor, I got to watch people dance a lot. And you start to realize, I'm not going to throw myself out there on that dance floor because my friends are looking at me. No. It's not that good. Sorry. There's another dance hall across the road I need to get to. And so that, for me, is how relationship with my wife, with those I'm deeply connected with now, came into being. And so I never, to come back to your question, Kari, personally for me, I don't actually think I was seeking. That wasn't the prime motivator for me, which is this truth that you need relationship to affirm knowledge in you, to call something out of you, to awaken your deeper nature. Truths. Everything I just said, the new message says, by the way. And as a 16-year-old, that's pretty confusing, because I could have just taken that card and redeemed it for chips and thrown them on the table 10 minutes later. But I personally didn't. So I think we have to be a little careful in trying to enact what the new message presents as the vision for a man or woman of knowledge in relationships of higher purpose. And start with where we are, which is we don't have those relationships right now. We have different relationships. Maybe some of them are not right. And in a way, welcome to ground zero, which is making decisions, which is learning to be alone, reinforcing your own protective barrier by making decisions on behalf of what you know, that actually act on behalf of the value of your life in the future. And I feel like it slowly builds from there versus we're lonely, we need relationship to find our purpose, let's go find some relationship, you know? And thus our eyes cruise the room and lock onto someone. And often that locking is highly personal in nature. And it really is driven by these unacknowledged needs, fears, fear of not having. Even as we are students of the new message or knowledge and students of steps. So I appreciate the space that, Marshall, you have inserted into the process of coming into a relationship of this nature. You don't step off the street of the world, find steps to knowledge, read about the power of relationship, and then at the next gathering or your next encounter, find it. If you do, I would say you're being personally driven out of need unacknowledged. And that to me, is not the process of these coming into being. So Marshall has inserted space, which is this relationship is on the other line. It's beyond that line of being ready, finding your purpose, building your connection to knowledge. So now you have the space maybe to do that, if you choose.
You know, may I add something here too? Going back to something much more elementary, you know, in our understanding in studenthood, which I think we share in common, which is to say that for the most part we're not where we need to be. So if we're not where we need to be, and if we haven't been where we needed to be, what does that imply? That implies movement. That implies movement. That means we will and we have moved through various settings from childhood, early childhood, family life, you know, early childhood education, and onward. Now, one of the diagnostics all along the way, and maybe some of us recognize this early on, is another elementary teaching is there anything I have to do with this person or them with me? Are we doing anything together? Mm-hmm. Okay, so early in life, in family life, you might have had relationships with your siblings, okay, and some of those may have been constructive or non-constructive. But the truth is, when I look back, I was doing a little bit with them. But over time, this pull towards going somewhere really drew me away from those relationships into other settings. And if I was fortunate, there might have been one or two relationships or the possibility of relationships with others with whom I could do something together, like as a young student, let's say. But it always felt very temporary. Along the way, we're traveling through this amazing landscape of relationship, right? And it's very confusing because you say to yourself, in the end, I don't know if any of you arrived at this place, but I arrived at a place of saying, is that all there is? I think at 28 years of age, I arrived at a profoundly disappointed place. Because I looked out, you see how relationships are played out in certain ways. There's your parents, there's your friends, there might have been your boyfriend, girlfriend endeavors. There may have been your boss, your coworkers, right? And there could be very meaningful things done in those settings, for real, true. But for some reason, it almost always came up short. And that's what's so amazing about this gift of relationships and higher purpose from the new message, is because it provides the secret ingredient. the thing that finally makes things make sense on some level. You know, so Kari, I mean, I think all of us know what it's like to be surrounded with relationships that hold very little prospect. That's difficult. And not everyone in the world has the possibility and the privilege of being able to move and change their circumstances. And I respect that. I respect that. I know that's true. And that's actually even painful for me because I've had the great privilege of being able to move to such an extent that I was able to find this man. Okay. So it really took me finding him, you know, and I had no sense, no priority about that's what it should be. In fact, right before meeting this person over here, this man, this messenger, I threw the whole option of relationship out to sea because I had to admit to myself, finally and completely, I did not really know what relationships were for. The reason for this confusion is a part of me and a part of you is calibrated, okay, to service. And what's amazing about relationships and higher purpose, like Marshall said, RHP, relationships of higher purpose, it's really about the higher purpose. You know what I mean? It's about the service. So what's amazing is there's a calling in the new message for relationships of higher purpose. Because this level of service is needed worldwide. Worldwide. You know what I mean? Worldwide. There's so many treasures in what Marshall was saying here. I mean, if I could only find them. Oh, please.
You know, the picture you just painted, which is there is a great need for relationships of higher purpose because of the needs in this world. Great service is not a great individual doing something, and everyone just benefits or everyone just receives. It's the result of relationship. Almost, it's like a prismatic force. The light enters what? A relationship, and then it goes where it needs to go. So there is a great need, but how do you get there by focusing on it? Do you get there by intending it? I don't think so. Relationship found her when she was not looking for a relationship. In fact, her personal intention was of great reluctance. The same thing happened for me. Just two experiences, two data points. But in some ways, the reluctant are chosen because personally they're not driving towards an alter vision of what they know they need to find, but that would never be found by driving at that vision. So what they create is almost like a parallel reality to RHP, which is romance and higher purpose, RHP. That's what the mind creates when it's driving at what it thinks needs to come into being. And so it's an interesting thing that sometimes you get where you need to go by not thinking about it. Sometimes you protect yourself from the intervention by never thinking about it, by doing something else, by focusing on knowledge or strength building or your pillars or your integration into the real world. The worst thing you can do might be to focus on it, in that case of the intervention. I think something similar could be true with RHP. And so, interestingly, the world needs it, but how do you get there? It's not by driving towards it personally.
See, that's what's difficult. That's with regard to putting forth relationships of higher purpose, because of the tendency to strive for that goal and not go through what was a fairly brutal process in getting there, is what I experienced. It was difficult, you know, and have to continually depart relationships that had fulfilled themselves to the extent they could, and go on and go on. Not because I had a notion. You often will hear us attempt to, you know, caution against idealisms. And so we don't want this idealized.
Right.
I don't know how this will come to pass, truly. It's just a process one has to go through of relinquishment, you know what I mean, and meeting responsibilities as you go.
Mm-hmm.
So this may create more questions than answers, and that's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In a way, it's like relationships of this level, which yield service of this level, are like the other shore, over that oceanic horizon. And now if we all just set out to find that other shore, I don't think you'll get there. In fact, I think the more personally driven you are for relationships, the less likely you are to ever have an RHP. I say that from my own experience. Looking back, had that been my motive, I don't think I would be married right now. Not to who I'm married to. In fact, I know it. So I have that conviction that the more you set out from harbor to get to that place, the less equipped you will be to actually navigate the ocean that lies between. So I'll leave that with you. So this is the challenge of teaching about relationships, is there is this spectrum of relationship. There are relationships of value in the middle, and then there's greater relationships further on. And where are we? Well, we've been programmed around romance that you complete yourself, you become your true identity by finding someone, by adding them to your life. And together, you now become. And we're programmed, especially in certain cultures. So we have deep conditioning. We're in a world where isolation is more prevalent due to some of the technological factors at play. We do have needs that are authentic, human needs, some of which need to be managed, not pursued or fulfilled yet. And so here's where we are, and then relationships is out here, is this spectrum. And how do you move toward that in a way that actually brings you there? And to just talk about relationships and how to find them, how to have them, is just going to activate, our thinking and our emotional need, and then potentially disable us from actually ever finding them. So,
the step relationships will come to me when I'm prepared also states that you don't need to go looking for a relationship. If you're doing the work you really need to be doing, if your life is moving where it needs to go, at some point, if it's purposeful, if it's meaningful, if it's right, others will come to associate with you naturally. But that is the journey to take, and I think that most great relationships come into maturity later in life, and they're the product of people taking a greater journey within themselves prior to their engagement. You can't replicate where we've come from in this reality. You can't find a level of fulfillment and inclusion that we naturally experience beyond this place, living in separation. And that's why the romantic ideal is so inflated and so potent in people's minds, is that they're going to try to fill the void of living in separation through one person, and it's never going to happen. And the thrill of that is quickly lost when two people try to live a real life together. So, anyway, let's take more questions. This is very good, by the way. Please.
My question is really about the sixth step, and not so much more impersonal relationships in the world. I was really around a lot of children this summer, and their parents, and there's so much unacknowledged anxiety in people about the great ways to change, really. And I read for the first time 80% of the world has a negative view of the future, and that's never happened before.
Probably, yeah.
That have that percentage of the world. And so I heard these painful statements, these children, Mommy, I don't want to grow up into this world I see, or my grandson loves animals, and he goes, will there be any animals left for me? And so my question is, how do you have a relationship with this kind of unacknowledged pain and anxiety, and maybe you have some suggestions of, I mean, I just try to have an open heart with them, and but I can't tell them it's all going to be all right.
Right. Yeah. You've answered your own question. Have an open heart with them. They're facing a future we didn't have to face. We had things to face, but I see the young people playing in the field across from my house, and soccer and playing, and probably need, they're enjoying life right now, but they're going to live through the greatest crisis in human history. Greater than any world war could ever be. They're going to live through it, hopefully. But they've also been sent into the world for their time, which is not our time. So, but that doesn't ease the pain of it. The innocence of childhood, the simple play, the creativity, the imagination, it's great. But as the skies grow darker, I mean, it's going to affect people in many different ways. And people who are delusional will probably become more delusional. And people who are escape-oriented will become more escape-oriented. It's also, this conversation I've been listening to is very good, and it reminds me of the trouble I had with spiritually oriented relationships. Of they're very idealistic, they're not worldly. The people involved really are probably trying to seek escape in each other. And they tend to become very delusional. So, because religion without knowledge tends to become very delusional. Idealistic, hopeful, wishful, to the exclusion of all other things. So, but that's another thing. But I think the open heart, the compassion, and be good to talk to their parents. What do they see? What do their parents see? Because if their parents are delusional or in denial, then the kids are still feeling reality, maybe more potently than their parents are. But the images, I mean, the reality is growing daily, and it's going to have a huge impact on people. Or it is having a huge impact on people.
But also, Chris, isn't that a great thing for a child to feel in relationship with the world? To me, I think that's almost, it can't be, it's unfortunate they feel hopeless, and I don't think that should be the case, but that a child is feeling and expressing that is a good sign.
Yeah.
I talked to an older lady at Whole Foods for about an hour last week. Her name was Sylvia, and she's lived in Boulder for 25 years, and she was just commenting on how it seems like people don't know how to relate anymore, in part because they have constructed a self, partially on social media, taking the selfie of them in beautiful places doing beautiful things that doesn't actually represent them. And people relate to them as that thing, that emblem of self. And we talked for a while, and it was a great conversation, and I could kind of see that indeed more of us are living outside of reality.
Mm-hmm.
We're creating a reality, very popular spiritual teaching, by the way, either through shaping our body, tattooing our body, stewarding a social media image. And in essence, we're living outside of the world we live in. And it's very easy to do that. And so romance is another and very costly way to do that.
Yeah.
It's a way to create something that doesn't actually exist with someone and live it out. So I think this is an invitation to step out of these alter realities, these holographic realities that are created through thought, through body, through image, through whatever, and to step into reality and to learn to live in the world that exists and engage with it. Not from a place of personal ambition or fear or frustration, anger, but from this other place. I kind of feel like that's essentially what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a training to live in reality and bring something to reality. So, yeah. All right. Anyone else? Yeah?
Actually, first, Marshall, two things. One, another line from the teaching that I always remember is, if you want relationship, seek purpose.
Yes.
The second is, for people in the future, there are many cultures where romance isn't even an option, where they're even more bound to their culture and their marriages are arranged and so forth. What would you say to people for the future who are in those kinds of situations, either married or being forced to be married?
Seek purpose. Knowledge and purpose. I mean, we came here to do certain things. If we're not doing them, we are restless. We are ill at ease. We are trying to find meaning through other things. We're trying to make what isn't meaningful meaningful. We're going to great lengths to do that. Romance, hobbies, sports, whatever the indulgence, the level of indulgence is. I mean, we're trying to fill that void of meaning, which can really only be filled by engaging with knowledge and focusing on purpose, because purpose is not what you want to do. One thing isn't what you want to do. Oh, I've always wanted to do this. Sort of follow your bliss, right? Well, okay. Purpose is what life calls out of you to do more innately. And that's why the more you're engaged with the reality, the more likely that calling will be either gradually stimulated in you, where you feel increasingly, I'm here to make a difference. There's something I need to do. You don't know what it is yet, but that's your orientation, rather than, I want to be happy, I want to be happy, I want to be happy. I want to be stimulated. I don't have to face these things. So, I mean, to live outside reality is to doom your life, basically. You probably won't survive. Or you become helpless and hopeless in a chaotic world. And but a lot of people take themselves out of the picture, even in free societies. Of course, you go to societies that aren't free, and then that's a whole different, panorama. But nonetheless, wherever you are, whatever culture, to seek purpose and a deeper experience within yourself, you can find ways to do that. Though it will be more difficult. You have much less personal freedom, personal space. Wow. I think living in Boulder is so not reality in the world. It's like living in Hobbit Town, but there's a Dark Lord out there. And so it's really important to go out into the world and to be careful and watchful and see things, that whatever it is to be seen. So that's why when we went to many places we went, we walked the back streets of Cairo or Alexandria. Walk the back streets of, any place that's a real world reality. I mean, of course, we stood out like a sore thumb, These two tall white Americans walking through a street where tourists never go, where they're retreading tires or building pots or, forging whatever. I mean, these dirty, smoky, earthy environments. And, we go visit the slums. I want to see the slums. I want to see where the poor people live. I don't want to live where the poor people live, but I want to see where the poor people live. I want to get reality. Reality is giving me more strength than avoiding reality would ever give me. But too much of the world will also overtake you and can make you extremely depressed or jaded or hopeless. So you have to be careful in your engagement. You have to return to the center. You have to return to what you're really about. No matter what's happening in the world, you still have the work you have to do, which was outlined in part today. You still have to do that work. You still have to bring your life into order. You still have to catch hold of yourself. And not just be blown away by, the latest, climate change, terrible news, or the tragedies around the world. I mean, it just takes you away. So you have to be careful. I mean, take it in smaller doses, but take it. Take that reality pill. Take it in smaller doses. All of you should be knowing what's going on in terms of the great ways to change. Not specifically everywhere, but generally. I mean, that's going to motivate you. And you're going to look at the world differently, like what looks permanent today will not be permanent in the future. And you just can really see things that people are just around you are not seeing. So it's important.
Let's take one more question, Marshall. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm David. I just want to share some of my experience first, and then I kind of I feel like is maybe a helpful question, something I would like to hear from anyone from. But I went through a stage of kind of unburdening, and I'm still going through it. We can have remnants from relationships that are not part of our higher purpose that kind of linger with us, and perhaps, going on the journey to the next gate, we get burrs on our socks or get bit by a rabid dog or something, and we might feel damaged going to the other side, or need courage to go to that field where there's just so much unknown, or the desert, the wilderness. And I know it was really difficult for me. I was pretty isolated for a while in my mind. But I knew I needed to release relationships that I knew were not part of my destiny. And I know some others may be going through something similar, or maybe that's their stage. So I just want to speak to my experience on that, in that it gets easier. And I've gotten help, but I certainly know that I find my strength in taking the steps and really listening and being with what the revelation is asking of me. Mm-hmm. And that's been really my anchor in most of it. And in the unburdening process, which for me has been a huge step. So if anybody wants to comment on that, I feel like that would be helpful to me too. So thank you all for being here today. It was wonderful. Very empowering.
I think the weight and the effect of our prior relationships and or engagements is real. The residual effect is real. And having had to go beyond those relationships took real energy and focus, and it could well be a component of the life fatigue. Sometimes that I refer to it, this what's in the bilge, And you'll carry that even into a mission-based life, and it will be there. And yet, over time, I feel it loses the sting. And you'll go back to those experiences and situations because they're reference points. There was something to learn there, something to realize there, something to claim about it. So you'll go back and you'll go back and perhaps benefit from what you can realize from it and go forward. Whether what you learned is relevant in the new settings is another matter, right? Is it learning for learning? So I think Marshall and we all have been gifted with this incredible revelation and perspective of the separation. And we're all in this together with everyone else that's currently living life in this, quote, human reality. And I think to get through unscathed is not what happens here. So, it's the analogy again of this patient I had who served on, he was a ground crew in England during the war, and responsible for helping to try to guide missions back in across the water. And his comments to me, I would ask him, what did it look like? What did they look like? What did these aircraft look like? Eventually, when the crew got off, what did they look like? And it was, they're shot up, And the thing was, can you just bring it home? You flew the mission, great. Whether you can bring it home is another matter. And he says many of these aircraft had to ditch in the channel. They didn't have enough engine power. They lost their landing gear. The co-pilot was gone, and it just really, as I sat and listened, I felt so privileged to hear his account because it felt like, oh my God, that's life. You know what I mean? When we go back, I don't know what kind of condition we're going to look like we're in, but thank God I think we're going to leave it on this side, And so that's, I think, what's at the root of compassion is really feeling others are enduring these same effects that we have, and you don't know they're not literally the same, but something like, and you almost, in a way, there's the term cutting someone a break. You almost, not totally, you're always, need to stand and discern what it is and who it is you're looking at and experiencing and interacting with, and also where you're coming from. Where you're coming from. I have this getting to know doc that Marshall referred to, and I encourage you all, it's like you even getting to know yourself, and you could actually almost use this as an expeditious tool to get to know somebody if you need to get down the road, because there's something you need to do together. But you don't need a whole bunch of mystery to pervade the space between you, like, what is that? Why did he say that? Well, she's, all that. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's this getting to know doc, right? What I dislike, what I like or prefer, what are my tendencies, what's my condition right now? And a condition is an evolving kind of condition. It didn't just happen. It's been what challenges me? What do I prefer? How do I think? What are my blind spots? And things like that. How much time do we have in our encounters with others? How much time? So I feel what you're saying, and the burrs, the bites, but also the encouragement here and there, the treasures that you may have experienced, the gifts from others who just keep going. And just know that on the other side, there is a landing crew, and they're attempting to bring you home. You know what I mean? And they know you, and they never released you into this life alone, And somewhere in your experience, you might sense the presence of this level of relationship. And to know that you're in service beyond yourself. Have I served you, you who have served me so well? Have I served you? So, yeah. It's so great to be together like this. Isn't it wonderful to have Marshall here? You know what I mean?
Still here.
Yeah. Oh, definitely still here. Definitely still here. You know.
Okay, one more.
Yes, this is Mary. I may have misheard, and I was the only one who thought I heard you say after when you were speaking about places of devotion. I thought you said the permanent can never be an object of devotion.
No.
Okay.
I think you did say that, Dad. You said the permanent cannot be the object of devotion. I think you meant something else.
I meant the impermanent. I meant the, sorry, I meant the impermanent.
Oh, good point of clarification.
Good call.
I
yeah.
still need to work on devoting myself to daily tasks anyway.
Precious little syllable.
Thank you, Mary. And Anna.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to add that word in.
We can
mechanically.
studio record it later, Marshall.
Yeah, take that part out or whatever.
Permanent.
Impermanent.
Good. Well, thank you all for joining us for this. This video will be on the community site for you to watch and review. And now we have a wonderful potluck, I hear, provided by all those in the community here in Boulder. So we send you digital sweet potatoes and kisses and hugs, and we will see you next time. Take care. Be well wherever you are.